I want you to stop what you are doing right now and give me your full attention for the next 25 minutes. Because what I am about to walk you through is not a theory. It is not a rumor picked up from a Reddit thread or a Facebook group. What I am about to lay in front of you is a documented, sequenced, verified financial trail, built from property records, legal instruments, forensic evidence, and law enforcement behavior, that runs straight through the center of one of the most disturbing disappearances this country has seen in years. And when you see it assembled the way I am going to assemble it today, from the first piece to the last piece, in order, in sequence, the way a prosecutor assembles a case before they walk into a courtroom, I promise you, you will not be able to unsee it. This is the Nancy Guthrie case. And the part of it that nobody is talking about loud enough is the money. Nancy Guthrie is 84 years old. She lived, in the Catalina foothills neighborhood of Tucson, Arizona. Her home is valued at approximately $1 million. It sits in one of the most desirable zip codes in the entire Tucson area. She had been living in that house for decades. She raised her family inside those walls. She built a life there. And on the night of February 1st, while she slept alone with her hearing aids out and no working security cameras and no alarm system and no one checking on her, someone came to her front door wearing a balaclava and double gloves, and they took her. She has not been seen since. Now the how of that night has been covered. The cameras going dark. The masked figure appearing on her doorbell footage at 1:47 in the morning. The moment at 2:28 a.m. when her pacemaker disconnected from the phone on her nightstand, meaning she had been moved beyond Bluetooth range. That means she was physically taken from inside her own home in the early hours of February 1st. That is not speculation. That is documented by the technology she was wearing inside her own chest. We know how Nancy was taken. What we have not fully understood, until now, is why. Why this woman? Why this house? Why this level of planning and preparation against an 84-year-old woman sleeping alone? That answer lives in the financial record. And we are going to follow it all the way to the end. Let us start with the property because property is where this story begins and where it may ultimately end. Nancy's home in the Catalina foothills is valued at roughly $1 million. That is public record. 4 miles away, her daughter Annie Guthrie and Annie's husband Tommaso Sion own a home valued at approximately $650,000. That is a gap of $350,000 between a mother's home and the daughter who lived closest to her. On its own, that number means nothing. Parents having more than their children is completely normal. That is not the point. The point is what that gap represents when you place it inside the context of everything else we are about to walk through. Because the most documented motive in cases where an elderly person is harmed by someone within their own circle is not rage. It is not passion. It is not a moment of violence that spiraled out of control. It is access. Access to assets that become reachable, legally or otherwise, once the person who owns them is no longer present to protect them. That is the lens. Keep it in your mind as we go through every single piece of what follows. 8 months before Nancy disappeared, in May of 2025, Tommaso Sion signed a durable power of attorney. The document named Annie as his agent over financial and property matters. When this document surfaced publicly, people with legal backgrounds immediately said what you would expect them to say. It is routine. It is the kind of thing people sign during a mortgage refinance. It is standard paperwork. And they may be completely right about that. A durable power of attorney is not inherently suspicious. Millions of married couples sign them every year. The document itself is not the story. The timing is. May of 2025 is 8 months before Nancy vanished. It places that legal instrument inside a sequence. And sequences, as any investigator will tell you, are where the truth lives, not in the individual pieces, but in the direction those pieces travel when you line them up in order. May 2025. Power of attorney signed. That is the starting point. Now we move forward in that sequence to sometime in the weeks before January 31st. According to a report published by Hidden Times, Annie Guthrie asked her mother for a loan. The amount is unknown. The reason is unknown. And critically, Nancy said no. I want to be precise here because precision matters in a case like this. That claim has not been confirmed by law enforcement. It has not been addressed publicly by the Guthrie family. It has not been denied either. What it has done is land in the middle of a case where financial questions had already been quietly accumulating for months. And what it did when it landed was give all of those accumulating questions something they did not have before. A starting point. A reason. A moment of friction between a mother and the daughter who would be the last person to sit across a dinner table from her. If that loan refusal is real, and I want to be clear, it has not been confirmed, then it changes what the dinner of January 31st means. It changes what the drive home means. It changes what the 14 hours that followed mean. Because on the evening of January 31st, Nancy Guthrie took an Uber from her home at 5:32 in the evening. That ride is fully documented. There is a driver. There is an in-car record. There are timestamps. The FBI has spoken to that driver. Everything about Nancy's trip to Annie's house is on the record. The trip home is not. Nancy did not call an Uber back. Tommaso drove her. He decided when they left. He chose the route. He was behind the wheel when Nancy reached her front door, and his account of walking her inside, watching the garage door close, and leaving, that account stands completely alone. No camera recorded the arrival. No neighbor witnessed it. No app generated a timestamp. The only version of those final minutes before Nancy was alone in her house comes from one person. Tommaso Sion. Think about that. The last confirmed moment Nancy Guthrie was seen alive by anyone outside her immediate family was the Uber driver who dropped her off at Annie's house at 5:32 in the evening on January 31st. Everything after that, the dinner, the goodbyes, the drive home, the garage closing, exists only in the account of the man who drove her. If the loan refusal is real, then that dinner was not just a family gathering. It was the first time Nancy and Annie sat in the same room after Nancy told her no. And the man who drove Nancy home that night is the husband of the woman who was refused. From the moment the garage door closed at approximately 9:50 in the evening, to the moment a friend called the next day because Nancy had not appeared on her church's Sunday morning live stream, 14 hours and 13 minutes passed. In that entire window, 14 hours, not one phone call, not one text message, not one of the people who had just spent an evening with her drove 4 miles to check on a woman who was 84 years old, who had a pacemaker, who needed medication at 10 in the evening that the Pima County Sheriff's Office said could be fatal to miss, and who was about to remove her hearing aids and become completely unable to hear anything happening around her. 14 hours of total silence. From the people who lived closest to her. From the people who knew exactly what her nights looked like. In families where elderly parents are living alone, the good night call is not a formality. It is automatic. It costs nothing. A 3-second text that says, "Made it home safely," is the kind of thing that happens because people care. That text was never sent on the night of January 31st. And its absence created exactly the operational window that whoever took Nancy required. No interruption. No unexpected check-in. No phone call that might have been answered by someone other than Nancy. A clean block of 14 hours where the only mechanism for discovering something had gone wrong was a friend noticing an empty chair on a live stream. Now I want to talk about the vulnerability. Because this is the piece that changes the financial argument from circumstantial to something considerably more uncomfortable. Nancy Guthrie was 84 years old. She was living alone in a $1 million home. Her dog had died and was never replaced. Her security camera system was not actively recording. She wore hearing aids that she removed every night, leaving her completely deaf to the world outside her bedroom. She had a pacemaker and required medication that was sitting on her counter and was, by the sheriff's own account, potentially fatal to skip. There was no overnight caregiver. No alarm system. No medical alert pendant around her neck. No one sleeping in the next room. Here is what I need you to hear. Every single one of those missing protections costs almost nothing to fix. A camera subscription is approximately $15 a month. A medical alert pendant costs less than $1 per day. An overnight home health aide in the Tucson area is available for a few $100s a week. These are not extraordinary expenses. They are the kind of baseline precautions that families with aging parents living alone put in place as a matter of routine. A phone call and a credit card. That is the entire barrier between an 84-year-old woman being protected and being completely exposed. The Guthrie family had the resources. Savannah Guthrie is one of the highest-paid broadcast journalists in the United States. The combined income across 3 adult siblings is more than sufficient to cover every single one of those protections many times over without any meaningful impact on any of their lives. None of it was done. Nancy was left alone in a $1 million home with no working cameras, no monitoring system, no emergency device, and no one close enough to hear her if something went wrong. Now factor in the reported loan refusal. If Annie was in a financial position where she needed to ask her 84-year-old mother for money and was turned down, then the question of why none of those protections were ever put in place takes on a dimension that is very difficult to explain away as simple oversight. Because an elderly mother who is unmonitored, unprotected, completely isolated at night, and living alone in a $1 million home is significantly more accessible than one who is surrounded by cameras, alarms, and a caregiver sleeping down the hall. I am not stating that as a conclusion. I am stating it as the logic that investigators apply in every single case involving this specific combination of factors and this specific victim profile. Let me now address what is happening at Nancy's house in the weeks after her disappearance. Because this is where the questions become impossible to dismiss. Photographs surfaced showing people at Nancy's residence loading items into vehicles. Annie's Honda CR-V was visible in those images. Boxes were being carried out of the home. I want to be precise about the legal reality here, because it matters enormously. Nancy Guthrie has not been declared dead. No death certificate has been issued. No probate proceeding has been initiated. No court has authorized anyone to remove personal property from the home of a woman whose disappearance is still classified as an active federal criminal investigation. And yet boxes were leaving that house, in the presence of Annie Guthrie's vehicle, before any legal process had granted anyone the authority to touch anything inside those walls. There is no confirmed report that Annie and Tommaso are planning to move into Nancy's home. But between the photographs, the presence of Annie's vehicle, and Tommaso previously observed moving through that house and garage with visible familiarity on the same day ransom notes surfaced publicly, people have drawn their own conclusions. And the picture those conclusions form is of a family preparing to assume control of a property that does not legally belong to them yet because its owner has not been declared dead. That is not a minor procedural footnote. If someone is removing property from the home of a missing person in an active federal investigation, law enforcement is almost certainly aware of it. The fact that it continued without any public intervention tells you one of two things. Investigators are watching and documenting it rather than stopping it. Or there is an explanation that has not been made public. Neither of those possibilities is reassuring. Now the DNA. Because this is where the forensic picture becomes genuinely extraordinary. A CODIS search, the national DNA database maintained by law enforcement, came back negative. Whoever left biological material inside Nancy Guthrie's home has never been in the criminal justice system. No prior arrests. No prior convictions. No history of violence that put them into any database. Think carefully about what that eliminates. It eliminates career criminals. It eliminates repeat offenders. It eliminates anyone who has ever been caught for anything that left their DNA on file. The person whose genetic material is sitting in an evidence bag somewhere in a Tucson laboratory has spent their entire life without a single contact with the criminal justice system. That person, from the outside, looks completely ordinary. They could attend family dinners. They could drive an elderly woman home. They could sign legal documents. They could ask for loans. They could live a normal, unremarkable life that would generate absolutely no suspicion from anyone who knew them. A hair sample recovered from inside Nancy's home, the one that the sheriff's office initially sent to a private lab in Florida rather than the FBI lab at Quantico, a decision that generated significant scrutiny, is now believed to be undergoing analysis at a level that has solved cases the world considered permanently cold. The laboratory linked to this evidence is the same type of facility that contributed to the identification and conviction of Rex Heuermann, the Long Island serial killer who evaded detection for decades. That laboratory specializes in forensic genetic genealogy. The process builds a family tree from a DNA sample and works backward through generations until it arrives at a living, identifiable person. It is painstaking. It requires time. It is not the kind of result that comes back in days or weeks. But it has never permanently failed when it has been applied to quality biological evidence. And if that hair recovered from Nancy's home has a root attached, which is what determines whether full genomic profiling is possible, then whoever left it in that house is already inside a database they do not know exists. That is where this investigation stands forensically. And it leads directly into what law enforcement is doing right now, or more accurately, what they are visibly not doing, and why that silence is communicating something. Sheriff Chris Nanos has not held a substantive public press conference in over a month. On the 3-month anniversary of Nancy's disappearance, he appeared briefly in a video clip saying he believes someone out there knows what happened and urging them to come forward. That is the public posture of a department that is either holding something it cannot disclose yet, or managing an investigation at a stage where public statements create more problems than they solve. Those are not the same thing, but both of them point in the same direction. Toward movement happening out of public view. NBC News built a specific internal protocol for this case. If news about Nancy breaks during a live broadcast, Savannah Guthrie is removed from the set immediately. A different anchor delivers the story on camera. The information is delivered to Savannah privately and off-air. That protocol was reportedly activated on April 15th. Savannah was pulled mid-broadcast and returned later without explanation. 2 days after that, she was absent from the show entirely. Networks do not construct those kinds of internal systems for cases they believe are going cold. They build them for cases where they expect a moment, an arrest, a discovery, an identification, that will land in real time during a live national broadcast. The existence of that protocol is itself a form of institutional preparation. And preparation signals expectation. NBC is expecting something to happen. They have built their newsroom around being ready for it when it does. Then there is the 911 call. The call that reported Nancy missing has never been made public. Not the recording. Not a transcript. Not even a summary of what was said or how it began. In Arizona, 911 recordings are public records. In the vast majority of high-profile missing person cases, the recording surfaces within days, sometimes within hours of the initial report. 3 months into this investigation, nobody has heard what Annie said when she dialed 911. Retired Detective Bob Gilliam, appearing publicly on an interview program, addressed this directly. He said there is almost certainly investigative information on that recording that law enforcement does not want available to the public yet. And then he said something that carries more weight than anything else in his statement. He suggested the recording may not be released until a trial date approaches. A trial. That word is not used casually by someone with decades of real law enforcement experience. A trial implies charges. It implies an arrest. It implies that the trajectory of this investigation, despite 3 months of apparent public silence, leads to a courtroom. And the 911 call is being preserved as evidence for that proceeding. Think about what might be on that recording. Annie's voice and the words she chose are obvious. But consider the less obvious elements. How much detail did she volunteer before the dispatcher even asked a question? Did she describe what she found at the house before she was prompted? Did she mention the blood on the porch? Did she describe specific details about the scene that a person encountering it for the first time would not yet know? Did she speak with the kind of knowledge that only makes sense if she had seen this before? And there is the 7-minute gap. The family arrived at Nancy's home at 11:56 in the morning. The 911 call was placed at 12:03 in the afternoon. 7 minutes between walking up to the home of a missing 84-year-old woman and picking up a phone. If blood was visible on the front porch, in a location difficult to miss, then what happened in those 7 minutes? Were they searching the house? Were they calling each other? Were they discussing what to say before dialing? Were they touching something they should not have touched? The 911 recording likely captures background sounds, other voices in the space, the emotional register of the person speaking. All of it is currently locked away. And a retired detective says the reason it is locked away is preparation for trial.